Elizabeth, thanks so much for joining us today. Really happy to have you on the 7th episode of Tim Talk. You are our first guest, so I'm very thankful and very appreciative of having you here today. So without further ado, I just want to say thank you. Welcome. And if you could just real quick, give us a quick background and overview of what you do and your experience within the space and share with our viewers what's going on.
Yeah, so thanks so much for inviting me today. I'm really excited to be here. A little nervous that I'm the first guest, but it'll be good. So I'm Elizabeth Jacobi. I have been in the email marketing automation space for over 20 years. I started my consulting business, Mocha Bear Marketing, in 2017, really to be able to take that same large brand strategy and help small and mid-sized businesses apply it. So I work a lot in customer journey. That's kind of, one of the things that I most enjoy, that I'm very passionate about. So I'm excited that we're going to talk about that today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think right along those lines, kind of give us a quick introduction and overview of what that customer journey is. What does that look like?
Yeah, so, I think a customer journey today is called many different things, depending on your platform, what you're used to. Sometimes it's lifecycle messaging, sometimes it's flows, automations. But really the customer journey is all about reaching that subscriber or customer at the right point in time with their journey with your specific brand. So that can be a welcome series. It can be a post-purchase series. It can be a lapsed customer series. It can really be so many different things. So I think the term customer journey is just so broad that, you really want to dig into the details on it.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point there, because the customer journey is so broad. There's the different stages of what a customer journey actually is, because there's the people who don't really know about you and they're coming in for the first time. And then you have your customers who have been maybe a customer a long time. And that's more of the life cycle customer journey, where you're trying to reach out to them based on past behaviors, things that they maybe have purchased, content that they've already interacted with. So I think you bring up a great point. There are definitely different variations to what the customer journey is.
And it's so interesting you say that, because I think historically we've just been so focused on like a welcome series,
right?
How you welcome new customers, subscribers. And oftentimes I see that brands forget about the people who have been on your list for a long time, who are current purchasers or who haven't purchased in a while. And I think that's why I like the fact that we do kind of refer to it today as like more of a customer journey, because it is a journey,
right? Not
just like a welcome series or a post-purchase series.
Yeah, I think as marketers, sometimes we get a little confused, or we get distracted on aggregating the new, and we forget about the existing and how to retain that retention part of the customer journey. We get steps kind of 1 through 3 down, but then we kind of fall off on the back end of getting them to advocate, to refer, or to retain them to maybe do additional purchases in the future. We maybe take it for granted.
I use the word retention all the time in email, because I do think that best describes what email marketing actually is. I think people have different views of email marketing and what actually it does. But when you say it's a customer retention channel and a customer retention marketing element, I think that's when the customer journey kind of comes into play, and that it is really a retention channel. So I think more so, I guess the SMS too is a retention channel, but to me, those are the two like big retention channels when it comes to the journey. And that can be from the time someone subscribes until they unsubscribe, obviously, but when they unsubscribe, they still may be on their journey with your brand.
Right. Absolutely. Which I think brings up just a quick point that we always talk about a lot is don't be afraid to let people unsubscribe, because unsubscribing is much better than them starting to mark you as spam. So we all get a little afraid of that unsubscribe at times.
I think because I work with a lot of small businesses, they're often very focused on the unsubscribe and how many unsubscribes do I have and why are people unsubscribing? What do we do to make sure they don't unsubscribe?
Yeah.
And I think it just happens, it's like someone who never returns your phone call.
Yeah.
Or someone you were friends with who you're no longer friends with. So I do think while I get there is that fear of the unsubscribe. I always say unsubscribes are actually a good thing. It's better than those people who, hit spam or who just start ignoring your emails and
which is even worse.
Never hear from them again. At least unsubscribe is some kind of action.
Right. Yeah. Because then you don't want to wind up sending someone emails for the next 180 or 365 days plus, and they never click or open, and you're wasting time and resources, even though it's not a lot, but it adds up when you have hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of those that are doing that.
And especially, over time, once you have been spending 5, 10, 15 or more years,
right,
that inactive audience is going to grow, and hopefully with a customer journey and kind of continuing to engage them at different intervals and with different messaging, you likely can keep, the vast majority. I think customer journeys do prevent unsubscribes, but you need to really be smart about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what would you say in your experience has been a lot of the common pitfalls or mistakes that most companies will end up making along that customer journey?
So I think that the most common mistake I see is that brands just say, well, I need to have a customer journey. I need to have a welcome series. I need to have a post-purchase series. I need to have a lapsed customer series. And yes, that is correct. Brands do need that. But in order to know when you should send these emails and at what intervals, I think mapping it out is critical. Because just because there is a best practice of a welcome email when someone signs up doesn't mean that all welcomes are the same. You really want to make sure that there's a strategy and thought behind every email you send, even if it's short and sweet, that's okay. The strategy is more important than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. So on that, when it comes to the strategy and like touch points, have you seen that a lot of brands miss the mark when it comes to consistency? Whether it be timing of emails or just the overall branding of their email messages. Is that something that you see on your side when you're helping clients maintain? Is that I guess I should say, is that more of a mistake that you see it happen a lot of times?
I do see that there's a mistake in consistency. I think once you build an automation, obviously the consistency is already happening because they're automated. Where I see inconsistency is with the actual marketing messages, like the standard marketing emails that go along with the customer journey. That often kind of fall to the wayside. And I think that's where there's some inconsistency. I think there's also some inconsistencies that I see that a lot of brands collect email address and they don't do anything then. There's no welcome. There's no email program.
Wow.
And that's almost worse than just not collecting it at all. It's fine. Like if you're a brand new business, you don't want to start collecting emails. But a few times people have said, one of the questions that I would ask people is, what's the first thing you should do when you start an email program? And they're like, oh, I have to start collecting email addresses. I'm like, no, you should actually have the welcome ready so that once you start collecting, you're sending something.
Right.
So I think I think that's where things kind of get inconsistent, but I don't know that I see a ton of inconsistency in terms of customer journey. I feel like once brands have it, there's a consistency. Again, it's more of the marketing emails that I see inconsistencies with.
Got it. Okay. And so I think also then what I what I've seen on our side is that consistency around, or the inconsistency around the actual messaging from a content perspective, where one email or one series may go out and it contains content talking about the branding, the what that organization may or may not do, and then you'll have a completely different series that goes out, and it seems that they are very disconnected. Is that something you see on your side? Just something that we've seen sometimes when we talk to our clients, that it does happen, unfortunately.
I do see that. And I mean, I work specifically on the email side. I know there are companies that work on branding. And I do think that the branding and the branding message is so important, because it's kind of what people notice. Even if they don't refer to it as branding, they know what your brand looks like. And I think if you don't have brand consistency, you're not going to, people won't remember you.
Right.
I struggled with this recently. I wanted to change my logo. I've had the same logo since I started, and all this stuff, like thinking about it, analyzing, oh, I should change it. I don't like this about it. I don't like that. And then I was like, I think I need to keep it because of the brand consistency. My logo has been out there attached to my name since I started my consulting business. And I don't know if people remember my logo, remember me. So I do think the brand consistency, branding is really crucial today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, because even here at Webbula, we did a rebranding on our logo a few years ago, and a huge thing that we made sure to keep in mind was the part with the red circle with the 8-bit W in the middle. That's what we had to make sure we maintained, because we didn't know who would remember us from the early days, and then who maybe would know us now. So I think you bring up a great point there, that type of consistency and consistent messaging is really important.
I do have a client who recently did a complete rebrand, and it worked so well because now everything, looks on brand, from the email to, their actual physical location. Like, everything is all the same brand. There's no way you don't know it's them when you get some type of message from them.
That's great.
So I think, but I do think the branding is just so important, and the brand voice.
Yeah. And so going back to the customer side, how often do you see that the client, that your clients will unfortunately end up fail to recognize customer triggers and how to actually develop proper cadences for that customer's journey?
I think that happens a lot. I think there's so much data out there for, every brand. And there's all those signals of, like, is someone a purchaser, just for the holiday season? Are they a repeat customer? Are they brand new? And I think that is where there's, I don't want to call it confusion, but it is confusion. It's just like a matter of, how do I use all of the data I have? Yeah. And I also think people get very attached to, well, I don't want to remove people from my list. I just want to do what I've been doing because it's working. Well, it probably is, even the brands that still do batch and blast, I'm sure email generates a lot of money for them, but it probably would generate more if they had a better customer journey strategy, if they had a better use of data.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times we try to overcomplicate what should be a very simple process. You put out your offer, give them an easy way to access it, click buy, and then go from there.
Exactly. I do find sometimes emails are getting so long because a brand wants to put everything that is going on into that specific email.
Yep.
And the truth is, you need to look at the data. Maybe in your specific brand, people are engaging at the very bottom, but most likely they're engaging what's at the top. So you could create, in the same amount of time, you could create 5 short emails versus one really, really long one that may not engage.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a LinkedIn post. It was this past weekend, ironically, where I saw someone talk about how long or too long is an email. What does that look like? And it gave a really great breakdown on understanding everything that you just highlighted when it comes to look at what your customer base is doing. Are they engaging at the top, at the bottom? Is it somewhere in the middle? And that right there is what should dictate how long or short your emails are that you're sending out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The analytics really tell you so much. It's not, and I always hate to see this, but it doesn't matter what you personally like. It matters what your audience likes and what they are telling you.
Yeah.
So sometimes, people will say, well, I love my template. I have to keep it. Like, oh, maybe we should test it because you could be right. You could be wrong. You never know.
Yeah. And I think that's a huge pitfall that we all struggle with, is that we don't like admitting that when we're wrong. And I think it's just a normal human nature that we all need, especially as marketers, that we all need to just be comfortable with saying, yep, this didn't work. I was wrong. Let's change it. Let's figure out something that does work. Now, I know that's not all marketers. Marketers are great, but we all have that human tendency to be a little defensive of something we put a lot of time and work into. And we think, well, why isn't this working? I like it. Why doesn't everyone else like it?
I think that's why you need to test everything, because we do get attached as marketers to an idea that we had, but maybe the idea needs to be tweaked, or maybe it's just not going to work.
Yeah, which, kind of a stab in the heart.
It's really hard. Yeah, it's really hard.
So, as we go through the process of, strategizing and understanding that journey better, and when you're looking at the personalization and you're putting all of that data together, what are some best practices that you've seen for allowing the customers to give feedback?
Yeah, so I do love when there's been surveys where, whether it's that you bought a product or that you're fairly new, a new subscriber, and they ask you for input. I think that, and they use the input you provide.
Yeah.
I think that really can go a long way, and it's a great learning for a brand to know, what customers are thinking. I think you don't want to do a really long survey, but,
right.
Short, 3 to 5 questions, maybe even only 3 questions. I think you'll get something from it.
Yeah. I think sometimes, or at least from what I've seen, some really solid brands, they've incorporated consistent feedback loops where, they'll test the waters, they'll see who provides feedback. And then one of the questions that they ultimately will ask is, hey, could we regularly send you questionnaires for consistent feedback? And I think that's a great way to keep loyal customers highly engaged, that you now know that you can go to Sally or Tom whenever you want to roll out a customer survey, because their top priority. They're most likely going to respond because they've now opted in to particular customer surveys on the direction of your brand, emails, promos that you may be rolling out. And I even think that sometimes it helps to incentivize those kind of brand ambassadors in some way. Hey, we'll give you 20% off your next purchase just by filling this out and being such a loyal customer.
I think a brand ambassador program is such a great idea, because you're getting information from your customers that you can then apply to brand new customers, to lapsed customers. I'd love to see that incorporated into more emails. Yeah. Because I just think today, especially, people like to feel like they're heard. So I do think that back and forth, and we always refer to email marketing as like one-to-one messaging. Right. But we need to make it more one-to-one messaging if we're referring to it as that.
Yeah. And I think part of that as well, that if you're going to incorporate those brand ambassador strategies, is that need to have a solid plan to act on that feedback that's given to you. Even if that feedback isn't what you wanted to hear, you need to have the strategy in place to either make the changes or to keep things consistent. Whatever the feedback is, I think that's also another downfall that companies will fall into, is that they ask for this feedback, they get it, and then they just ignore it, which is, it's never good.
Yeah, that is true. I have seen that a lot of feedback does get ignored, but I do think there's so much learning from feedback. So companies should not ignore that. Good and bad.
Right. Yeah. Good and bad. So with your vast knowledge and experience, what are some of the roles that you've seen from different CRMs and systems that are out there that have made things easier for you, more difficult? What are some challenges and ways that you've been able to overcome that with different CRM systems?
Yeah, so I think I don't ever really blame the CRM system if there's an issue. I'll get a lot of clients that come, or prospective clients that come to me and say, I don't like platform A because I have a high bounce rate. I'm like, well, that has zero to do with your platform.
Right.
We're just moving problems from platform A to now platform B.
Right.
So I definitely think that all the CRMs out there, they all have slightly different things, but at the end of the day, it's more about the data that you put into it and how you're storing it and then how you're using it. So I don't think that one platform is, I don't think necessarily that the platforms are an issue. I think they all may call things slightly different. They may have different rules in terms of, setting up emails, and cost is obviously a big factor, why people may switch platforms, but I haven't found that any of the platforms are a major issue, for at least not with the problems I see with clients, that it's more about the data and the strategy, or the lack of strategy.
Right.
I'm sure there are others in the industry that would, feel differently and maybe have opinions on one platform over the other. But as a consultant, even though because I work with small business, I work a lot with MailChimp clients. I still am fairly platform agnostic. So I do build strategies for clients who can be in any of the platforms out there.
Yeah. I asked that question. It wasn't to trip you out, because it was more to highlight what you're seeing, because I think that a lot of marketers need to be reminded that we do get in the idea that, this is the CRM's fault. They're not doing this, or they can't do that. And in reality is the strategy usually isn't implemented properly. And it's a tough time to swallow sometimes, that, you have to look at yourself. Okay, what am I doing that I could make it better, to work properly, to get our message out there, to have everything cohesively work better.
I think we would all like to blame something other than ourselves. So I get it, what people will say, it's the platform's fault. Well,
because it's easy to do.
There's an outage, but chances are it has something to do with the data or strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you see, or what you've seen on your side, and we've got all the changes, with AI, and now we've got VR and AR coming down the pipe. Do you see email marketing being implemented in different ways with AR and VR in any way? Just want to touch on that real quick. We may not have to, talk about this a whole.
I don't know that I'd be the right person to speak about the AR and VR. I mean, AI, I use a lot, not as a replacement to myself or for anything, more just as a time saver. I think there's a lot of time saving, elements. And I just did a webinar through Only Influencers with Jean Jennings and the Metrics team that I'm a part of. And we talked a lot about AI. She actually did a webinar before about creating an AI persona, and it's great. I highly recommend people look at these things because it's very clear that AI is not going to replace the email marketer or anyone in marketing, but I think it will make you a better marketer because it'll help speed up some of the things that we probably spend way too much time on that we don't need to.
So let's kind of talk about that real quick. So on your side, what you're seeing, how have you seen it help speed up processes on leveraging AI properly and not just saying, hey, write this whole email campaign for me, because we know that's not going to work?
Yeah, I think, looking at data files, helping you analyze the metrics. So I did a year in review for a client and I had AI really help me with it. Could I have done it on my own? Of course, I was doing it on my own, before AI.
Right.
But did it speed up the time that I could get the client the report? 100%.
Yeah.
And I was able to spend more time in writing the analysis and really thinking about like, okay, so since AI told me this, based on the file that I put in, this is what I recommend.
Yeah.
So I think to me, that's one of the biggest areas. Sometimes copy rewriting, helps. Also, that feeling where you stare at a blank page for hours or what feels like hours, I think, it could be a starting point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think AI does not replace anyone, which I know is a fear, but I don't think it will.
I think it's a valid fear just in terms of it's new. It hasn't been fully tested yet. We're always afraid of change because we don't know what's going to happen when that change gets implemented. However, while a healthy fear, I think that marketers we all need to do a good job of embracing that AI, leverage it to enhance our already strong abilities and capabilities to, like you just pointed out, slow or speed up processes so you're not having to spend as much time doing that. Compiling the entire end of year report, you can now do a better job of looking at the full-on analysis and provide a more detailed description, and you're providing more value to your client.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think AI is kind of like the shiny new tool. So, I remember the days before there was automation for email. We had to do everything manually. So just, something new. And, when automation came into play, it's not like I was replaced. So I just didn't load files manually anymore. But
absolutely.
I still had a job.
Yeah, you still had a job. You still had things that you needed to do because you have to have someone to oversee it. You need to make there's the human element that AI will never be able to replace. And it's that common sense factor where we can look at a situation and say, okay, as a human being, how would I react to this? This is probably let's make a few changes. Let's change some words, maybe switch things around to make this more of a human feel, which is very important.
I would agree.
Yeah. So last thought that I have before we close out our session today is just when we're looking at to the AI part, when we're evaluating, how can we help AI kind of refine that whole customer journey? I know you pointed out real quick on you do the end of year summary for some of your clients, but how can we help encourage other businesses to leverage that and use that?
I think it's a matter of just starting to use it. When I first started using AI, I didn't really know what I was planning to use it for. So I started by just, playing around and figuring out like where it was helpful and where it made things easier for me and where it wasn't.
Yeah.
And I think I do think that anyone working in email or any part of the digital landscape should really be at a minimum just playing around with AI. But I think, you want to figure out how it's going to best benefit you, not, I don't think you're going to ever learn everything there is about, any tool, But I do think it's important that it's something that people, utilize because it's here. It's not going anywhere. I think it's only going to be more prevalent within the email marketing world.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think it's something that, needs to be used on a fairly regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely. We even see it on our side with a lot of our clients, how they've wanted to embrace AI. They've talked about how they want to encourage their teams to use it more because, especially with that whole customer journey that we've been talking about today, is how it can just be layered in to help fill in missing gaps, do a lot of data analyzing, fill in missing pieces when it comes to maybe timing, sequencing, whatever it is that AI has noticed that either we didn't notice or we just haven't picked up on yet because we haven't got around to maybe studying that. So if you have an AI that can compile all that data for you, you've got it there in a snapshot. You can look at it and you can enhance that customer journey for your customers.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think it will find insights that you may not have thought of. I mean, I know it did for me when I just kind of threw the file in and was like, oh, go ahead and analyze this. I did have to then feed it questions. I had to reformat things, but it also gave me ideas that I don't know that I would have thought about on my own.
Yeah. And that's a great thing. It's like having a little sidekick that sits next to you and say, hey, did you think about this? Or I found this. What do you think about that? And it's like, oh, I didn't even notice that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So
it's great. I used it the other day for an Excel formula.
Even better.
And it was correct. So I was like, oh, that saved me a ton of time. But in the past, I'd Google, how do you do this in Excel? And then I'd find some, YouTube video. And this just gave me the exact formula to copy into the cell. And that was great.
Yeah. You're going to get it right there.
5 minutes trying to figure it out before I thought, oh, maybe I should put this into AI and see what it gives me. So I wasted 45 minutes, but I would have done it in 5 otherwise.
That's awesome. Well, Elizabeth, really thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate you being part of this episode with us here, talking about the customer journey. If you ever have any questions or you're a small business and you'd be looking at getting some more ideas on how to increase your marketing, feel free to reach out to Elizabeth. We will have the link to her site in the description. Feel free to reach out. We love you guys, and we'll see you next time.